I left for the Naval Academy in 1973, graduated there in 1977, so officially your commission starts in 77, although those 4 years you are in uniform, at the academy, certainly. That deployment did take us to Japan at one point, but it's a Western Pacific deployment. So you head west, stops in Hawaii, Midway Island, and then you head over. We spent quite a bit of time in Japan, mostly southern Japan, Sasebo, that area, down through Hong Kong, went to Subic Bay, and then went to the Malaccan Straits over to the Gulf. And all that was just in time, if you will, for Ayatollah Khomeini to take over the embassy in November of 1979. So we were sitting in Subic Bay at the time. We thought we were going to enter a 3-week overhaul period. And literally, that morning we started offloading, and that afternoon we were all called to quarters saying, put everything back on the ship, because they'd just taken over the embassy, and we were sailing with the Kitty Hawk Battle Group to go over there and represent U.S. interests. And of course that played out, took 444 days, as we all recall. So we were just there until probably about March of 80, I think, something like that. Then we got relieved, and another battle group came over. So we were the first ones over there, though. That was a pretty interesting time. Waiting for orders or waiting for something to happen, that gets a little monotonous after a while. But at the same time, I always said it was better to stay at sea, because at least you had a routine, something to do every day.
Was there a sense on the ship that's like, boy, let's go get them. Let's make this right?
Yeah, I guess there might be among some people that sentiment, and certainly at times you might feel that way. At the same time, there's a lot bigger picture than that, and I also like to say those of us in the military, we're actually the last ones who want conflict. The goal, as I saw it over there, we had a pretty large contingent of American firepower in this battle group. And the goal was that we would provide deterrence from anybody else trying to do anything else. And the further goal was that we would convince the Ayatollah that, he needed to accede to our demands, or else we would have. And not that we wanted to, but we could have. So, maybe that's my perspective too now, 35 years later. But, American firepower, the last thing you actually want to do is use it, truthfully. You'd rather be able to solve the problem diplomatically. Transitioning to the reserve back in the 80s especially, was totally different than it is today. When you decided you wanted to transition back then, you were a quitter. You were quitting the Navy. It's like, well, wait, this is still a Navy Reserve? No, you're quitting. And you literally had to resign, and then you had to go see a recruiter and come back into the Navy Reserve. That's how distinct it was. And in fact, that distinction lasted till I became Chief of Navy Reserve, and working with my good friend Pat Walsh, who was the Vice Chief of Naval Operations at the time, and a classmate of mine. We said, we're going to end this policy so that now you can transition from the active Navy to the Reserve Navy and back to the active Navy and go back and forth without having to resign your commission and be re-recruited back into your same Navy, that you know and love. So that transition was tough back then. But if the Navy or the service is a passion and it's in your blood, which it was for me, I just kept trying to find ways to serve. And that meant Navy Reserve, we used to joke about it, is if you could get through a reserve weekend and have it not cost you out-of-pocket money, in other words, your reserve pay would pay for your airline reservation and any other costs that you had, that was a successful drill weekend. So that's the kind of sacrifice that even yet today many of our reserve and some of our Guard service members make to be able to continue serving. But as I said previously, as long as they gave me real meaningful work to do, and I did, I was able to travel all around the world and do some amazing things. The goal for our Reserve and Guard should be that every time we call a Reserve or Guard servicemen forward, that's exactly what they need, because they'll do a good job of it, first of all, and then when they come back, they'll tell their family and their employer and everybody else, wow, that was an awesome, whatever it was, 2-week or 2-month or a year-long period of duty. I was used every day, and I was effective when I did. And then our families and our employers will keep supporting these Guard and Reserve rotations. If we haul them out and they sit for 2 weeks, or they sit for a month or whatever, and play basketball and cribbage or whatever. The whole thing breaks down. I think Navy, maybe society too, has changed a lot in that, or changed a lot in that 35 years. I mean, literally, as a junior officer in the ship, when you were standing watch as the command duty officer, the senior officer on the ship at night, I felt like I was on the marijuana patrol. I mean, literally, drugs were rampant in the Navy back then. We had just gone through the Zumwalt years, which he published all of his Z-grams, which were, remarkable social change in the Navy, allowing beers, and eventually we took that back again, but trying to conquer this problem. And then I think it was the CNO Tom Hayward, when he came into office, is saying that he started that I loved was not my Navy. It's my Navy, and you're not going to do drugs in my Navy. And we conquered drugs in the Navy pretty well, but primarily I think probably through urinalysis testing, frankly, and getting really rigorous about that. So look, you take drugs, you're not going to get away with it for long. We're going to catch you, and we're going to throw you out when we do. That threat might have been idle when there was a good economy, but in the poor economy, it's a pretty strong threat. We're going to throw you out. I think later on, additional social change that came about, besides drugs, probably in the, I don't know, maybe the early 2000s, when we had a lot of sexual assaults. And, the military has held, rightfully so, to a higher standard than society. All of these things, drugs, sexual assaults, any of the social stuff, is much less in the military because there's a military order here going on than it is society, but it should be much less. And so when we were dealing with that, we resurrected that saying, actually, not in my Navy. We will not tolerate sexual assault. Every day in our Navy, 2 to 3 or perhaps even more of our shipmates are sexually assaulted. All too often, these heinous acts are committed by one sailor on another, and all too often, alcohol is involved. No one, sober or inebriated, has a right to inflict the lifelong scars and emotional and physical damage of sexual assault upon another person. No one. That is why every Navy Operational Support Center, every Navy Reserve unit, and every reserve sailor must step forward and create a climate where everyone is treated professionally. We've seen a lot of change. The one thing that is definitely consistent throughout, but consistently good, but maybe even has gotten better, is the technical ability, and it has to be because our ships and our aircraft and everything, the submarines, it's an amazing time right now. Firing laser weapons, they're real. This isn't just Star Wars stuff. I mean, we actually have lasers operating in the Gulf right now. Shooting an electromagnetic railgun, that propels the actual projectile at some 200 miles, leaving the barrel at, I think, 1,100 feet per second with no explosive, just, electromagnetics, accelerating it throughout the gun barrel. This is an amazing time right now. Again, hopefully all to deter those who would want us to do us ill because they know that you're not going to beat us.